The January 16, 2019 meeting of the Windsor Planning Commission will now come to order. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Chairman Gail Schick,
Present.
Doug Dennison,
Present.
Kelly Hall,
Present.
Victor Talon,
Present.
Jerry Bushelman,
Present.
Daniel Foreman,
Present.
Cindy Showerman,
Present.
Town Board Liaison David Soslowski.
First item on tonight's agenda is a review of the agenda itself by the Planning Commission for any addition of items or changes to, or new business to the agenda itself.
Mr. Chair, I move we accept the agenda as written. Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we accept the agenda as presented. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no. Motion carries unanimously. Next item is public been invited to be heard. If there is anyone in the audience who has an item they wish to present to the commission that is not on tonight's agenda, now is the time to do so. If you do have an item, if you could come to the podium, give us your name and address. You'll have a 3-minute time period to give us your information. So if there is anyone who has something that they wish to present, now's the time to do so. Seeing nobody's beating feet up here, we'll keep moving here. Our next item is the consent calendar. This evening's consent calendar consists of the approval of the minutes of the December 19th, 2018 meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes of the December 19th, 2018 meeting.
Second.
And moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Showerman, that we approve the minutes as presented. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no. And the motion carries unanimously. Moving into the board action item, we will close our regular meeting, open up a public hearing for a conditional use grant for a temporary recycled asphalt parking container in the Central Business District.
Did that
Melissa.
not change on
You have the floor.
the memo?
It is in this one, but I don't know.
Okay. I apologize. I wanted to clarify the title of that. It is actually a conditional use grant for a temporary recycled asphalt parking lot. Originally, container was in the earlier memo by mistake, and I was like, did we not? I thought we had changed that language, so I apologize if that is anywhere in here.
Okay.
But I was using the template from the container at the library, and container got stuck, so I apologize.
You're just seeing if we were paying attention. I know.
Yeah, well, it was good. It was interesting. It was
That was going to be a big container.
yeah, and recycled, you know. That's okay. So again, this is a conditional use grant for a temporary recycled asphalt parking lot on Lot 23 of the Burlington subdivision in downtown. Conditional use grants are reviewed in accordance with Article 8 of Chapter 16 of the Municipal Code. Conditional uses are, this classification is intended to allow consideration of uses that are unique in nature or character, except as otherwise specifically provided in the chapter. And those that are not as included as uses by right in any specific zone district. So the proposed temporary recycled parking lot is proposed on Ash Street between 6th and 5th Streets down in the downtown, immediately west of the existing temporary parking lot, if you recall that in the downtown. The site is zoned CB, or Central Business District. The current plan, there is a existing building on the site. The plan is to remove that building and then regrade the lot and construct this temporary recycled asphalt parking lot, or parking lot using recycled asphalt. Currently, our code does not include the temporary part or the recycled asphalt. It requires a full paving of concrete or unused asphalt or fresh asphalt. So both those pieces are part of this conditional use. The intent is to replace the existing parking lot that is between, or that is immediately east of 5th Street. That has a conditional use grant as well for a temporary recycled asphalt parking lot. That conditional use grant does expire this April 2019. At this particular time, we're not replacing that CUG, but if time comes closer and we don't, or the DDA, I should say, if we don't see a parking lot go in between 6th and 5th, we'll have to readdress that time frame at that time. But at this time, this is just for the new parking lot between 6th and 5th. The DDA is proposing a 5-year time frame. They hope that will keep things on track to actually redevelop the lot into structures and buildings beyond just a parking lot. I do have 3 site plan options here. They're just 3 layouts that the DDA has been working with a consultant to get some idea of what they can park on the site and how that will function and circulation. I did want to note that these site plans, next 3 slides, do show some landscaping on the site. At this particular time, DDA is not proposing landscaping because of the temporary nature, and that makes some sort of sense because hopefully this will be redeveloped within 5 years, and the investment and then also the loss of the trees that would go in, or any vegetation that would go in now would turn around to likely in a place where they can't be transplanted. So this is the first one of the layouts. Again, it's trying to get parking count, and the intention is to try to get at least as many parking spaces as the lot to the east. A second, they're very slightly different, just getting a little bit more, maybe using Ash Street as a parking area, although this one probably won't work because of the maneuvering into the street. And then a diagonal version. And again, these are still concept, and at the time, if this is approved, they will come through the planning department for a site plan to get review from engineering for drainage and all those items, and then planning will review it for standards on aisle widths and parking lot widths and lengths. So conditional use grants do have 8 standards and requirements that we review. The first is the character and the quality of the area in which the use will be located. And this will be on an underdeveloped lot. It has a building, but it's not fully developed on the site to its full potential. And again, it's intended to be redeveloped in the future. Parking is an appropriate use for the downtown area. It's adjacent to the Boardwalk Park, adjacent to businesses in the downtown, and it's adjacent to a similar use that's been granted in the downtown. The physical appearance of the use, including suitability of architecture and landscaping treatment, is also reviewed. The proposed parking lot will resemble the current parking lot and many parking areas in and around the downtown. Again, landscaping is not proposed at this time due to the temporary nature. Appropriate location of the building or buildings on the lot. Again, the existing building will be removed, so that's not being addressed at this time, so it's not really applicable. Adequate provision of parking, loading, and circulation facilities is also not really applicable to the situation, although that circulation will be reviewed and literal parking will be reviewed with the site plan of this, but it's not in relation to a building on site. Potential effect of the use upon off-site vehicular, pedestrian traffic circulation, potential traffic congestion, and it's not seen that this would add vehicle traffic to the site as if it was an attraction to business or such. It does replace the lot to the east, but it's not really a traffic generator itself. It's receiving the traffic. Potential effect of the use on storm drainage in the area. Drainage will be reviewed by staff. If this is approved, they'll come in with the site plan as mentioned. And there is some ponds in the area that could be directed, the stormwater being directed to, and that'll all be reviewed and approved by engineering before construction is done. Adequacy of planting screens where necessary. And again, planting is not proposed at this time due to the temporary nature, and then plans for redevelopment on the lot. Provision of controls to avoid hazardous conditions or eliminate air, water pollutants or other noxious influences. This one we did have some concerns about with the design. for the DDA to consider. It is immediately south and abutting the railroad right-of-way, and to avoid folks just crossing the railroad right-of-way toward Boardwalk Park, and then also to avoid somehow vehicle parking in the railroad right-of-way. We do have one of our conditions of approval is to put some kind of fencing along there to distinguish that and to honor the right-of-way and for safety's sake, so that folks will cross the right-of-way along Fifth Street where it's designated right now. Otherwise, we don't see any hazardous situations or anything else being caused by this. The general compatibility of the proposed use with the area in which it's to be located, and we do, again, this is something seen in downtown already, and it seems to be compatible and supportive uses in the area. So notification, this was put under public notification according to the municipal code. A neighborhood meeting was not required for this kind of conditional use grant. I wanted to make that note. The recommendation, staff does recommend the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the conditional use grant application to the town board as presented with the following conditions. And some of these, I believe I hit most of these on here, except for one I did not get to specifically, but we'll address here. One, that the parking lot shall be properly maintained and accommodated or accommodate adequate areas for circulation and movement of emergency vehicles, and that's a pretty much standard requirement that we would have for site plans. But since we want to make this clear that this is something that would need to be included. The applicant will work with the town's engineering, public works departments to ensure the drainage is adequately addressed. This is the fencing to be approved by the planning department will be installed to the north property line to deter people and vehicles from accessing the railroad right-of-way. And then fourth, fencing to be approved by the planning department will be installed along Ash Street for the length of the property to designate access points to the parking area. This is the part I omitted or failed to mention earlier. We also thought there might be some potential along Ash Street that people may get confused. The curb is not very distinguished there, that if it was left open, it might become multiple access points and it might cause a little bit of unnecessary confusion. However, the applicant has asked if that could be something that's considered at site plan and determined then, rather than make it a full requirement, because there could be other ways to distinguish the access points other than just fencing. Then number 5 is the duration of the temporary parking use shall not exceed 5 years from the date of, and if town board approval as proposed in the, okay. 5 years is the time frame that the applicant is asking, and that's the same time frame that staff is supporting it. And if in 5 years an extension is needed for any reason, we can relook at it at that time. So that is the presentation. Staff does request that the following be entered into the record: the application and supplemental materials, the staff memorandum and supporting documents, the testimony from this public hearing, and then also this recommendation. So that's the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. The applicant, the director of the DDA is also here tonight, and he's happy to give you a brief summary or answer any questions that you would like to hear. Yeah.
Okay. Does the applicant have any additional information or presentation?
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity, Commission. My name is Matt Ashby. I'm the Executive Director of the Windsor DDA. If possible, if we could put up the illustration of just the broader map. I do want to talk a little bit about the broader context. This is one step in a larger redevelopment effort that the DDA is pursuing, and this is the first step, I would say, of official action that's taking place. Over the past 18 months or so, we have worked with the town board to secure ownership of the 512 property, the subject property of this request, and that was with the intent of being able to support a broader redevelopment initiative along what's called the back lots. So the Town Public Works block to the west is envisioned to become a mixed-use development. We've been working with the American Legion on identifying potential locations for them to move to that are better suited to the functions of their organization, addressing ADA accessibility and their overall functions more successfully. They recently voted to support a move to an alternate location on 4th Street. So that was one major accomplishment towards moving this project more towards reality. The goal would be then to consolidate the Town Public Works property as well as the Legion to support what could be a mixed-use building of 80 plus or minus residential apartment loft units and 6,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, which would be a restaurant or brew pub or something along that line, as well as some live-work units potentially. On the other side, the DDA parcel is envisioned as a, again, mixed-use series of buildings, potentially residential above, with the corners of those buildings being commercial spaces, and a redeveloped alleyway. We likely will be back before you for a replatting process on that property, as the alleyway is not currently platted the entire length of that stretch. So there's been some things that have come up that were surprises to all of us, and likely you'll be seeing more of me as this process progresses. But at this point in time, we're working to secure a temporary parking on the 512 parcel. That will give us time to identify what the ultimate parking solution is for downtown in this area. About 2 years ago, as we were looking at the potential for a library in the downtown core, we did some studies on what a parking structure might look like in this vicinity. I don't know if that's the solution ultimately of what's needed or appropriate, but the temporary parking in this location gives us the time to be able to see how the development shapes up and to kind of evaluate that question, as well as financing for a structure and things like that over the next 5 years. So we would anticipate that at the end of the 5-year period, we would have some clarity on whether this location becomes a permanent surface lot, whether a structure is built in this location, whether it's built in another location. That would be our goal, and that is ultimately the purpose for the request of the 5-year period on the conditional use grant. So with that, that provides a little bit of background. Again, I anticipate being before you again with more information on some of the other project components, but I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have at this moment.
Okay, if we have some, we'll bring you back.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Since this is the public hearing portion of the process, is there anyone in the audience who has any questions or comments pertaining to this agenda item? And if you do, if you could come to the podium and give us your name and address and your comments. Okay, comments from the Planning Commission? Okay.
Since the conditional use grant allowing parking on the DDA parcel expires in April, what is anticipated to happen with that parcel in the short term?
Mr. Chair, through you, I would anticipate that our first track is working on the Town Public Works site and kind of getting that portion of the project moving. We don't anticipate that the DDA lot will be far behind with the development proposal for that site, but I would defer to the direction of town staff as far as when the current CUG expires on that property and how that would be handled. But our anticipation would be that we work to get the new parking lot available, up and available for use before eliminating the option on the current one for accessibility. Mr. Chair, if I could
Yes.
add one more thing.
Okay.
The condition number 4, as identified, of the fencing along Ash Street, would respectfully request that that be deferred to site plan, simply because there could be the potential that as the public works site plan is developed and/or the DDA site is site planned and developed, that there could be streetscape improvements that are planned for the frontage of that lot, as far as either sidewalk or streetscaping or things like that. I would hate to have a condition to install a fence. If we do end up adding those streetscape elements, it could indicate that the curb and gutter might be replaced and formalized through that construction process. So if that fencing along Ash could be deferred until the site plan review process, there may be better solutions that come up through the process.
Scott, do you have any issues with that?
I'm comfortable with the request and agree that there could be other things besides a fence, and to lock it into a fence, maybe I don't want to say overkill, not necessary. So,
I agree with Melissa.
We would have one or the other, right?
and maybe it's changed that during site plan review, more preciseness or the goal of emphasizing access points and deterring a full access movement along Ash, or some kind of language like that that says the intent that is to clarify where the entrances are to provide safety for the access to the site, and not necessarily saying it's a fence that does that, but through the site plan design, access to the site will be clarified or just.
So was that a yes or a no?
It's a yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure,
And I did want to say in response to the question about what will happen in the meantime if the parking lot to the east of Fifth Street and this one is installed. That actually isn't something that I fully thought about. I'm not sure there's any reason why the two can't be there concurrently, as long as the applicant addresses that initial timeframe. Again, that CUG for the existing lot now, the one east of Fifth, is up in April 2019. So if it's going to extend, we'll need to either extend it or figure out how to not allow that use to happen. And I'm not sure that benefits anyone either, so.
we'll let you handle it then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, Jerry? Yeah.
You're gonna put any type of surface treatment on the wrap, or just the wrap itself?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the
Any
question?
surface treatment on the wrap,
On the lot?
the recycled asphalt that you're putting?
Yes. I am not 100% sure as far as what surface treatment would be. We would propose it to be very similar to what's existing on the block to the east. So,
That's my background. We
Yeah.
either put tack or rejuvenator on it, which gives much more stability, unless you're gonna use brand new wrap right off the road, so.
Got a new job for you. Any other comments from the planning commission?
Mr. Chair, move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Talon, seconded by Commissioner Dennison, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes, those opposed vote no. Motion carries unanimously. We will reconvene our regular meeting, moving into the next agenda item, which is a recommendation to the town board for the conditional use grant that we just discussed. Anything further, Melissa?
No addition to what's been presented so far.
Any further discussion from the planning commission?
Mr. Chair, I move that we forward a recommendation of approval of the conditional use grant to the town board, following the conditions as stated by staff, with one exception to item 4. We'll defer that to the site plan at that time.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Tallon, second by Commissioner Tennyson, that we follow staff's recommendation and recommend approval of the conditional use grant to the town board with the following conditions as noted by staff, with the exception of number 4. We'll defer that to the site plan. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving to the next agenda item, we will close our regular meeting, open up another public hearing for rezoning petition, portion of Windsor Manor, 7th filing, lot 3. Carrie, I take it, huh?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this is,
Be sure to speak into the mic.
oh. So this is a rezoning application called Windsor Manor subdivision, 7th filing. This application was reviewed pursuant to Article 5 of Chapter 16, Section 16-5-20, which sets forth the process and procedures for rezoning applications. The subject property is just north of Ash Street, east of 13th Street, and south of Honeysuckle Court. It's just about 1,600 square feet, very small portion of that lot. It is currently zoned multifamily residential. It's surrounded by PUD with underlying general commercial and also single families also in the vicinity. This proposal is to rezone this section to PUD general commercial to match the lot to the south, which it will be joining in a minor subdivision that's being considered in conjunction with this rezoning petition. So this proposal is in conformance with Chapter 5C of the Comprehensive Plan for Residential Areas Framework Plans, and that it supports high-density residential development near downtown commercial centers and mixed-use development. It's also consistent with Chapter 5D, Commercial and Industrial Areas Framework Plan, supporting the maintenance and investment of existing neighborhood infrastructure and services as the town grows. All the notifications were done in conformance with the town's ordinance and the rules and regulations for rezoning. The neighborhood meeting, the ad was published on November 7th, 2018. The notices were mailed to all the neighbors in the vicinity 300 feet of the subject property by November 5th, and the meeting was held on November 28th. And then notifications for this hearing and for town board were published on January 4th, along with the mailings, and the sign was posted that week. Staff recommends that Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval of the rezoning petition and ordinance to the town board, subject to all remaining Planning Commission and staff comments being addressed. Staff requests that the following be entered into the record: the application and supplemental materials, staff memorandum and supporting documents, and all testimony received during the public hearing, along with staff's recommendation. And these are some of the criteria for you to consider in your decision. Mainly that it's in conformance with the comprehensive plan and meets the zoning requirements Mainly, most importantly, it avoids a split zoned lot.
Is the applicant here?
I'm sorry?
Is the applicant present?
Yes, the applicant is present.
Okay. Does the applicant have any additional information they want to present? Okay. Comments from the commission?
Move to close public hearing.
Second?
And moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Showerman, that we close the public hearing. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. And motion carries unanimously. We will reconvene our regular meeting and move to the next agenda item, which is a recommendation to the town board for the rezoning petition that we just discussed. Comments, questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I move that we forward a recommendation of approval of the rezoning petition and ordinance to the town board, subject to any planning commission or staff comments being addressed.
Second.
And moved by Commissioner Talon, second by Commissioner Bushelman, that we forward a recommendation of approval to the rezoning petition and ordinance to the town board, subject to all remaining planning commission and staff comments being addressed. Those in favor of the motion will vote yes. Those opposed, vote the opposite. And motion carries unanimously. See if anybody pays attention anymore. Communication from planning commission. Mr. Foreman.
Nothing.
Cindy.
No communications.
Jerry. Victor.
No communications.
Kelly.
No communications.
Did I take you by surprise or what? I mean, we're going right down the line.
I was expecting Hall. Everyone else gets
Doug,
Nothing, thanks.
I'll give you warning next time. Communications from our town board liaison who is not here. Communications from staff. Melissa?
No, sir.
Carrie?
There were no communications.
Scott?
Just wanted to point out the site plan materials that are in the packet under the communications item. If the planning commission has any questions or comments about those, please forward those on to us. But that's just a site plan for the Valley Center subdivision, fourth filing, lots 1 through 3. You may recall last year there was some concern from the surrounding property owners that the buildings were facing, or the rear of the buildings were facing outward towards the neighbors, and so they withdrew their proposal, went back, worked with the neighbors, and reoriented the buildings. So now the current proposal is, I guess the neighbors are happy with the reorientation of the buildings. So if there are any comments, let me know. Other than that, I don't have any other communications items.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Amanda? Just glad to be here, right? Me too.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned.